So I have my axle housing right here that'll mount in the buggy, and I'll take one of these, I'll cut this in half, put this on here like that, and what that will do is clamp down on my bearings to hold my bearings in place, and I'll have two bearings on this side of the spacer and two bearings on this side of the spacer, and then my axle will just slide right through. And then I have set screws right here where I can tighten down on the bearings and nothing will move in there. And then with this being cut in half and be able to like clamp down on these, I can take these out and replace them if they ever go bad. So I think it's gonna be a pretty efficient setup. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the cutting and then get the mounting. A little hot, but I got the bongs welded on for the bolts, got it cut in half. Now I need to drill a hole in here about 2 places, slide the spacer in, and then plug weld to the spacer so this stays in place. And then I'll go back and I'll cut the spacer in half where it's cut in half right here, and then these cuts are somewhat square, so it should help my bearings to sit in there square. And then I can, after I get this piece in, I can slide the bearings in, bolt it down, cut my shaft to length, slide it in, and then I should be set to go. And I mean, I still have to make brackets for this to mount to the buggy, but I should be set on having this assembly built. So I got the axle built, didn't take me too long. What I'll do is I'll put a plate right here, I'll drill and tap this so I can bolt together. Then over here I'll put another plate and I'll drill holes and I'll plug weld it so it's stuck to that, and I'll weld it on this side of the plate so this is solid. And then I'll just take out this bolt, this will slide off, this will slide out. Then I'll loosen these and replace the bearings in there. But pretty happy with how it turned out. It seems real strong and seems like it's gonna work really nice. Made some progress today. Didn't really film it, but made these brackets so the axle can sit down. I also welded the hubs on. so my sprocket and my rotor can mount to these. And hopefully today I'll have my axle mounted in the buggy. Got the engine, or got the axle mounted all back together. Got the tabs down there to mount the cars, and now it's just ready to be taken to the car and go ahead and install it. So it'll go in there somewhere. Might have to take these bolts off because it's interfering with this plate, but should be all set to go ahead and put it in. So I'm about to tack in the axle. I've taken measurements, made sure it's level with the engine, so the sprocket's all lined up nice and straight. My last axle setup, I had a lot of issues with my rear sprocket being off from the engine, so I'm hoping I'm measuring all this stuff right and everything's built square to where I won't have any problems with all this stuff. So let me go ahead and get this tacked up. Also, I'm going to leave everything just tacked in. The engine's tacked in right now. I'll just have this tacked in. That way I can make sure everything lines up, and then if everything lines up, I can go ahead and weld it. So I'm just going to go ahead and double check. So I got it all tacked in. I'm just going to double check one more time, make sure it's all good. So I'm going to square off the engine, because if this is square with the engine, then the sprocket should be square with the engine. That's what I'm thinking. So now that's all tacked in, I can tighten this down here and then start bolting up my brake caliper and my sprocket. Right now I'm working on getting the axle finished up. Got my brake mounted. I got my bleed valve up at the top so I can bleed it on the car. I just gotta put some tabs to where I can put in my tie rod, where I can adjust my axle back and forth for the chain tensioner. And then after that, should be able to weld all this stuff up. Everything's looking good. And I can move on to the exhaust. So I'm thinking about putting a piece of metal like this over here that comes up to about here on this side. That way I can come up and brace it, and then have tabs that come off for my tie rods, essentially, to adjust the chain tension. And that way it'll kind of beef it all up so this doesn't move. It's more to beef this guy up than anything. Probably be overbuilt, but probably better be overbuilt than this flop around and break off. So I have this template that I helped make this guy, that have my bends in it and whatnot. So what I'm gonna do is take that template, try to size it up. That way I know how to cut this piece over here. Cut this piece over here, and then I can just bridge over and then fill in the blanks. And if I have to, I'll use more cardboard templates. These guys are awesome. So you're not wasting metal trying to figure it out. You just cut it on a piece of paper, put this on top of a piece of metal like that, and then cut it out. So now that I got this all boxed in, I can go ahead and run tabs off that come back for my tie rods. So right now I'm about to put in a bar right here to here so that my chain tensioner bars can mount from the plate right there to this back bar. It's actually going to knock out two birds with one stone because it's going to strengthen this back centerpiece anyways, because I needed a bar down here anyways, so it's a little bit stronger. So it's going to be strong back here and allow me for a point to mount to that to tension my chain. And then after that, the chain tensioner, or the axle setup, should be ready to be welded out. Can take it all apart, take the bearings out, weld it all up. I got a new TIG welder, so I'm going to try to TIG weld it. Still waiting for a cart to come in, put my TIG welder on a cart, but try to TIG weld it all out. Hopefully it'll look good, be strong, and then I can move on to the exhaust and my axle will be done. So I got my chain tensioner tabs fabbed up. I just gotta tack them on. Gotta tack these guys on. I'll have one here and I'll have one over here. After I get these tacked on, there's a plate back here I gotta fill in, and then I can take this all apart and start welding it all out. And then the axle should be fully done. That's gonna be really nice. got those bad boys tacked on. So those will come out. Those will come out to this bar eventually. I just gotta make some tabs for that. It'll come from there to this bar. I'll make some tabs. That'll go there. That'll pull back, and that'll pull back on the chain, and that'll cause it to tighten. So now that I got those on, I go ahead and disassemble the whole axle, take it out of the car, and then plate that front side, and then go ahead and weld it all up. This is the back side that I need to plate. You can see in here I didn't weld this where I relief cut it to bend it, so I'll go ahead and weld that before I plate this. But this is basically the whole axle assembly. I can take out this set screw. This comes off. I have a hole in a bolt that'll go in here to keep this on, and that'll keep this whole assembly together. But I take out this bolt, that slides out, and the axle slides out, and I loosen these bolts, and I can take my bearings out. So I'll go ahead and do all that, and then I'll weld it all up after I plate that backside, and then I'll weld the tabs down in the car. I'll weld the motor mounts, because right now the engine's just tacked in there, because just in case I had to move anything. So I'll go ahead and weld all that stuff. I'll weld that. I'll weld all this up, and then the axle and the rear brake should be all completely set and ready to go. So that's pretty exciting. Then I'm going to move on to my exhaust and some other stuff, but got my axle housing all completely welded up. Turned out pretty good. I'll go ahead and assemble it here soon. If I can come back to the back of the car. On my axles, I have these caps that keep on coming out. So went ahead and siliconed it. I don't know if that's the right way to do it, but that should hold it. So I'm just gonna let that cure. So I'm not gonna quite go ahead and install the axle yet, because I want that to cure up. So this is how you put this axle carrier together. Take these two, just slide them in. This one slides in pretty okay. Just gonna give it a good little tap, make sure it's all the way in. I have a spacer in here where these bearings can only go so far. I go ahead and put this one in. Make sure it's all in like that. Then I can take out my screwdriver. Then again, I just make sure those are pressed all the way up against the spacer in there. Go ahead and tighten these. Alright, now that that's tight, those aren't going to go anywhere. And now I can put in my axle right here. Now you go ahead and put on this one. And then I just have these little set screws that go in. And the set screws won't be what keeps it on but fully. I have a bolt and it just goes in the side right here. And that should keep this one on pretty good. This bolt's a little bit too long, so I'm gonna have to cut it down. But that's kind of the gist of it. It's all together. Now I can go ahead, tighten up those set screws, and then this axle's ready to go into, or this axle carrier I should say, is ready to go into the buggy. So I'm having issues. My sprocket isn't completely balanced on my axle. So you can see how as you turn it, the chain will get tighter and then the chain gets looser because it's like oblonged on there. So I messed up the last hub, so I wanted on a new hub. And I had this one machined, so it's perfectly true. Now it's been straight, so I shouldn't have any issues with my axle going side to side, or my sprocket going side to side. So now I should have no chain issues whatsoever. So now I can finally install both the axles, get the sprocket on, and I should be done with the axle. Finally got the axle fully done. Got my brakes mounted, my sprocket, my chain seems to have no issue at all. There's no binding up. Standing on the sprocket, everything looks nice and straight, so this is an awesome feeling.